in our society and in our time. It's very important for literature from the ground to come. Literature from the minority community should come out, and that just not include Muslims. That includes all disadvantaged communities, and that will include the women. That will include the Dalits. That will include the people, those who come from a certain disadvantaged sections by class. You know, if somebody who comes from a ghetto writes a book, you should read it because you need to know what happens there. So that is the first thing. Why do people, why do people outside should read it? Because that is, I think, Muslim ghettos are one of the most criminalized places in the psyche of the people. You know, and it's not just people from a certain community, it's even Muslims who criminalize ghettos. बहुत easy है ये वाली बात कहना, और अक्सर सुनते हैं लोग कि भाई वहाँ चोर उचक्के रहते हैं, वहाँ आपको नहीं रहना चाहिए. इसके लिए कि और इसमें हम कहीं ना कहीं हम लोग खुद ही शामिल हो जाते हैं, जो मुस्लिम गhettos और मुस्लिम इलाकों को हम लोग क्रिमिनलाइज करते हैं. तो वो इसलिए भी बहुत जरूरी है किताब पढ़ना कि what people, those who live in Muslim ghettos are people like us. They are not very different. They are not aliens. They are not criminals. That is one of the most important thing. And then I'll pass the mic to my teachers, who it's my honor to be sitting along with.
Yes, sir. I'd like to direct a question in the similar vein to each of our panelists in turn as well. What are your first impressions of the book, about the significance of its title or its content or the form or style of writing of the book or anything? Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for asking this question, and thank you very much for including me in this panel. First of all, I must talk about the book. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book. And the quality of a good book is that it should be gripping, it should have your attention full time. And this is one book which actually I started reading and I finished reading in 3 days. And I was also doing other things. That is one very important thing about its prose, about its presentation and other things. Let me also just extend what Zeyad had just said. If you see this book, this is a kind of coming of age book. That means it's a memoir, and there are 3 very important sections in this: childhood, boyhood and adulthood. There is a little difference between an autobiography and a memoir, because memoir captures part of an author's life and autobiography can be the whole life of a person. Often these 2 terms are used interchangeably. But in recent years, I can talk about 4 important books which actually somehow talked about Aligarh. One was Nasiruddin Shah's And Then One Day. It had a very interesting chapter on Aligarh University absurdism. But basically Nasir was talking about his stint as a student and especially his exposure to drama in Aligarh Muslim University, and how actually he was made to read certain important playwrights which otherwise he would not have read. Nasir's is a bit critical account of Aligarh Muslim University. The second important book was General Nasiruddin Shah's memoir, and because Nasir had already covered a lot of ground, Shah Sahab had to skip many things. And his account was also about Aligarh Muslim University, and of course he revisited many important controversies which happened during his time and also his achievements. And the third very important book was Muzaffar Ali's book, Zikr. Now I think that Muzaffar Ali's book was very important because he is not only talking about his film, he is also telling us that how he would not have been the filmmaker he became if he had not come to Aligarh. That means his efforts to revive Urdu cinema, or his efforts to think his cinema through the prism of Urdu poetry. That was his single contribution. Now, all three books actually are talking about Aligarh Muslim University. Now, what about Aligarh city? And here I must also make a confession that I have lived in Aligarh for about 40 years, and I have discovered Aligarh city through this book. I have been to many of those places, but I have discovered many of those important localities. I didn't know anything about Guriabad. I didn't know much about Chanwari Ganj. And in fact, I also remember actually, Ziyad's book made me remember that how my love of films actually took me to an old cinema hall, Royal Talkies. I was all alone there, and it was the period of 1980. The city was in tension. So Ziyad's love of comics took him to different localities, and there my love of films actually took me to cinema halls which were in remote areas like Royal Talkies. So that is, but here thing is that we are discovering Aligarh city, and we are discovering different localities of Aligarh. We are discovering different ghettos actually. And here I must also mention that, of course, Paul Brass has done some very important work on Aligarh. And his book actually on Hindu-Muslim violence is a very important intervention. Then there is Ashutosh Varshney. Ashutosh Varshney is these 7 cities which have a history of communal violence. And in fact, Aligarh is one of those cities. So in fact, as the figures actually that quotes that 49% death, urban death, are accounted for by these 7 cities, and Aligarh happens to be one of those 7 cities. But the thing is that they are talking about these figures. But the real city, something which does not come into Paul Brass's book, something which does not come in Ashutosh Varshney's account, something which does not come in the autobiography or memoirs of these 3 very important persons, that comes in Ziyad's book. I actually find that the book is written with a lot of candor, written with a lot of frankness, with a lot of honesty. And in fact, I can quote number of incidents from the book where Ziyad actually had not bothered about presenting a good image of himself. In fact, if you read this book only in part, for example, if I can think about some events that Ziyad described, especially how they happened in his school, in St. Vincent, how he became a rebel there, how he will take issues there, and how he also play many school pranks also. Many of those things certainly are difficult to tell. And I'm thinking about one very fundamental question that Hanif Qureshi used to ask in his writing workshop. He will ask all participants to write 2 sentences very candidly about themselves. And this was the most difficult exercise for his participants, to write candidly about themselves. I can see that Ziyad has written very candidly. If I have more chance after this? Yeah. So maybe I can just finish this at this point, but I'll come back. There are many other things.
Nafis sir, you have the insight you bring is very different from most people. So Asif sir has talked at length about the specific version of Aligarh that Mr. Zeyad presents in his book. What are your overviews of the book itself and the content that it presents in terms of style as well as the image of the city that it projects?
Let me begin by thanking Zeyad for writing this one. I'm fortunate that I started the year with another debut novel of Shehan Karuna Tilaka, Chinaman. And thanks to Zeyad and partly to HarperCollins for making it a Christmas event, I could read this one at the end. As Sir was saying, one must remember, and this is Harry Cruz who says in Biography of a Place, nothing is allowed to die in the place where storytelling people live. The complexities of these characters, and this is extremely challenging in the context and times that we live in. Allow me to indulge a little what I'm trying to say. House being
Privilege of being somewhat better off in that locality. And then it came as a responsibility to of treating not me just as a person, but also as a resident of a Muslim ghetto, who's slightly privileged than his neighbors. So that is something. Also, I have a lot of I'm a very distractive personality, like I will get distracted easily, but when I can focus, I will, in some of the moments I was there in that moment, uh, like I was there with when somebody was going to attack my bus. I was there when somebody was hitting me. I was there when somebody was trying to set my house on fire. I was there. So, I do believe the human mind is capable of great things, and one of the great things is remembering things. And like this thing fascinated me, like about memories. Like when you think about memories, like if you give yourself enough time and space, you can be in that moment. You can feel the exact thing that you were feeling at that moment. I was doing the same exact thing. So it was not very difficult for me to maintain that childlike innocence. Also, I had to be honest, like, I don't know, like there was an illusion the world might end. Like we were in the times of the COVID, like when pandemic, when people were dying in hordes. I never knew like we might, I might see the other side of the day. The world might end. I was in that illusion. So I was writing like, what if this is
of overwhelmingly students. So here I would like their attention to one very important aspect of this book, and that is the writing part of it. You see, if I can just use two words, then I say that this book reflects in a very effective manner, in a very emphatic manner, a consciousness of voice. A consciousness of voice. Now, think about consciousness of voice in Asr prayer. The bus was as quiet as a mosque in Asr prayer. Another, those days are as hazy as December school mornings. And then see another very original thing. Softness in her voice vanished as swiftly as madrasa kids after their lessons. There is not only wit, there is also a certain observation. Actually, when we teach students in our theory class, which Zeyad mostly did not attend, you see, you have a writer, you have a reader, but you also have another category called the narrative. That means there is a world there which is created, and when we think about a story from the point of view of narrative, the thing is that everything may not be processed by the narrative in a similar manner, because the world of a narrative may be very different from the world of another narrative. So for example, in an English reader, in reading many of these sentences, say as quiet as quiet as a mosque after Asr prayer, they may not follow. Many English readers actually don't even follow the concept of cheating in the examination, right? But this is a world actually. This is a world, and this is created not only through the writing of many incidents, it is also created through very original singing. Let me give you another example also from this book, and one very interesting example.
पीछे नीचे आ रहा है बैनर
Milan Kundra, for example, is very famous for writing meditative essays. When he writes a book, there are essays on important subjects, and those essays are actually part of the narrative itself. Of course, Zeyad was not writing fiction, but the element of narrative actually defines a memoir like it does any novel. Now, there are number of interesting words, concept words I would say, words like memory, words like mob, words like many such words where there are very serious reflections. I just, what words I have actually noted. So what we see that there are very interesting reflections. Yes, Batvara, or ego, or abandonment, or memory, or migration, or fire, or hate. These are all loaded words. And these words also have a historical resonance. Now, in very short essays, Ziyad captures the historical resonance of those words and their present provenance. And I think that is part of his style that he captures. And yet another feature of his style is, especially I like there the last sentence. The last sentence was, and I am reading that the last sentence. The book actually is something which is not without hope. So even when he is talking about Royd, even when he is displaying the consciousness of Royd, hope is everything. And many of you were present when Professor Shah Alam made his beautiful presentation. When he was talking about fake news, when he was talking about hatred, when he was talking about the post-truth. And there also he ended with this observation that whatever be the situation, hope should remain our very important ally. Now Ziyad also presents very interesting relationship with his father. And of course this is a relationship which is very interesting, very nuanced relationship. First, he has unqualified praise for his father. Then there are moments actually when he is critical of his father. And then towards the end of the book, he sees a certain aspect of his father's life which actually gives him. And here the sentence actually which ends the book and which ends on a note of hope, because his father never lost hope. His father never lost hope in the concept of togetherness, in the concept of mutual coexistence, in the concept of India, Aligarh being our home, as much our home as anybody else's. That was his article of faith, and actually that is my article of faith also. This is my country, this is my city, right? So the last sentence is, I was now turning into my father. I was now turning into my father. And actually break the glasses, start using, and he repeats, break the glasses, start using, and he repeats one line many times. मैं मेरा बाप नहीं हूँ, मैं मेरा बाप नहीं हूँ. Now this is just the opposite. When Ziyad actually, when this moment of being comes, and this moment also gives hope, that comes to his father's belief in the concept of mutual existence. And that's why I say that it's a wonderful book. All of you must buy this book. And one more very important thing, because the students are here, I am a very critical reader. Whenever I see any problem in copy editing, whenever I see any problem in the book, my eyes are trained to see those things. There is not even a single blemish in the book. So when you are reading this book, you are also learning the craft of writing. Forget Freud, you are also learning the craft of writing. See, for example, how you signpost. Now, for example, how when he ends the first part, the last sentence in the first part, that prepares you what is to come in the next part. And then every chapter, especially the last sentence, prepares you to expect what is there in the next part. So that means you are not simply learning about Aligarh, you are not simply learning about a particular consciousness, you are also learning the craft of writing. And then I was reminded of the words of Derek Springer. Actually, Derek Springer is not a philosopher, William Fraser and Dutchman. So David Gower, and you know that there is a very typical English sense of humor. David Gower was talking to Derek Springer, and Derek Springer said that I was. He said that how did you start stated commentary, and how did you start writing columns? He said that I was at Cambridge, I graduated from Cambridge, and David Gower with his typical English humor said, oh, at Cambridge they do teach you how to put together a few sentences correctly. So their two teachers are mentioned in this book, Aisha ma'am and Samina ma'am. I'll say that they did teach Ziyad how to write.
Uh, on this note, I will just talk about my teachers a bit before we pass the mic to. Like one of like I want to talk about one thing. I will probably can I use Hindustani? तो मैं कोई बहुत अच्छा स्टूडेंट नहीं था. मैं पढ़ने में अच्छा था मगर आयशा मैम और समीना मैम कहेंगी कि काफी बदमाश था. मैं वो लड़कों में से था जो आकर पीछे से निकल जाते थे. पर बहुत निकल आपको नहीं पता चलता था, मैं निकल जाता था पीछे से, है ना. तो एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट बात ये वाली बात है कि आयशा मैम एंड समीना मैम ऐसा नहीं था कि वो सिर्फ जो बहुत स्टूडियस और अच्छे बच्चे होते थे सिर्फ उन्हीं से इंटरेक्ट करती थी ना. आसिफ सर, दैट इज समथिंग दैट आई विल से. वो मुझे लाइक शायद ये किताब यहाँ नहीं होती, शायद के आयशा मैम ने एक किताब दी थी मुझे और पामुक की स्नो एंड शी सेज किसी ने चुरा ली. वो मुझे पता है कि वो किसने चुराई है, मैंने मेरे पास नहीं है. पर आई डू नो हु हैज दैट बुक but it's not me. So but the point is like there are teachers and there are teachers who inspire you in different ways. कुछ टीचर होंगे जो बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रिक्ट होंगे, कुछ टीचर होंगे जो आपको बिल्कुल इरिलेट भी कर देंगे. वो भी मैं एक बात मैं बोलूँगा एज अ स्टूडेंट. पर एक ही वाली बात है कि आप अंदाज़ा नहीं लगा सकते कि मतलब कि किस में क्या टैलेंट है. तो अगर शायद मैं पढ़ाई में इतना ज़्यादा कंसंट्रेट नहीं करता था मगर लाइक व्हेन समीना मैम शायद शी वुडंट रिमेंबर दैट टाइम राइट नाउ बट शी वाज टीचिंग अस a poem called The Last Duchess. Am I pronouncing it right? और ये पोएम पढ़ाते में समीना मैम काफी ज्यादा इमोशनल हो गई एंड देन शी सेज वन थिंग. शी मेड ऑल द बॉयज इन द क्लास मेक अ प्रॉमिस that they will never be abusive to their women. They will never be abusive to their wives. तो उस वाले मोमेंट में मेरी क्लास में सब टॉक्सिक मैस्कुलिन बदमाश लड़के खड़े हुए हैं. मैं देख रहा हूँ कि यार ये बिल्कुल इमोशनल हो के ये प्रॉमिस कर रहे हैं कि हम कभी किसी औरत पर हाथ नहीं उठाएंगे. एंड दैट वाज समथिंग एंड आई कुड सी दैट समीना मैम वाज आल्सो इन दैट मोमेंट. सो लाइक आई डोंट रिमेंबर द लेसन्स. I don't remember what was taught in my second year graduation class की history में. I do remember the people and how they behaved, you know, how they talk to students. तो आप लोग ये भूल जाते हैं कि आपने क्या करा था. लोग ये नहीं भूलते कि आपने उनको कैसा फील कराया था. तो थैंक यू आसिफ सर, Asim sir, Samina ma'am, Aisha ma'am, and all those teachers who do these small acts of kindness. And with like also it is for all those students who still snuck from the last bench. Like ऐसा नहीं है कि hope है अभी भी आपके पास, पर हाँ थोड़ी मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, पर पढ़ना भी जरूरी है. पर ये भी बात सही.
You've talked very poignantly about the way that different teachers and different professors affect all of us differently, and that is very much true and relatable to all of us even now. And Asif sir also talked at length about the importance of deliberate choices of words and phrases. So when it comes to word phrases, Nafis sir, what do you have to say about the conscious choices that have been made by the author in the book? As well as about the question of the name of the city and the politics of it.
I would also refrain from the name changing spree discussion, but not for the same reasons as Sir does. It's always, the way this is being portrayed, and this will keep on being portrayed that this is a game, and they're winning it. They lionize at 9 p.m. news. But the way I see it, and the way the book also mentions at a few places, is like Alan Moore says in V for Vendetta, that they say life is a game, then they take the board away. So but at the very same time, what we have to remember is what is essential here is invisible to our eyes. That is the lived experience that Zeyad has been able to evoke in many places. For example, comics. So when he mentions, and here I would really not agree with him, matching any of these Raj or Manoj comics, which by the way I've also been a fan, to DC. What we do instead, what our novels did instead, and he does mention it, while I was thinking, he does mention it a few paragraphs later, is that constant infantilizing of characters and certain people reduced to mere placeholders. Now here comes Super Commando Group that he mentioned. There is a Muslim character that comes up, a very good guy. You have to be a good guy in order to be a placeholder. Now that same placeholder, when a couple of incidents in chapter 6 take place, alleys of blood, and we know what those incidents would be about, is the pain those trauma causes to the lived ones. And I mention his words when he says that pain makes us shadows of ourselves. Shadow placeholders are excellent placeholders, and these are the placeholders we are. And let us not, and I'm an incredibly pessimistic academic, and I'll continue to be. So let us understand the reality of the shadowed placeholders. Let us understand the tools that we have in order to narrate our lived experience, as he has done very, very well. And those lived experiences would be really, really useful, almost as useful as we want. I, for example, want, I'm not an as avid reader as you all might be. When I want to know the lived experience of 1947 or a 1990 or a Jallianwala Bagh. So those lived experiences are extremely important, and we have to salvage each and every lived experience before everything starts getting colored into placeholders, shadowed placeholders, and the lines of the news.
Thank you, Nafisa, for your candid words about this. In relation to the last question that I asked you, Judge, I'd also like to know, in that same vein, how do you think works like yours, like such as this memoir, serve as archives of micro-histories and micro-narratives about names, stories, and cultures that would otherwise be lost or reworked by historians or forces of the state, for instance?
It does, and that's a very, very important question. I do see, I was also talking to this in the panel with Mr. Hirschmander, academics and journalists alike, people from my community, people from my profession, we have a habit of reducing people to things. मैं जर्नलिस्ट की बात करता हूँ कि अक्सर ऐसा होगा कि a journalist will report on something and after that he will forget about the person that he reported on. So, and even for academicians and journalists, people are just statistics. But for the people or for the loved ones, they are people, they are lives, they are emotive, people with emotions. So that is something that I do. Journalism and academics does fail to look into the human aspect sometimes, and sometimes even the act of कि मैं तुम्हारी कहानी बता रहा हूँ, जैसे कि तो वो भी मेरा जो I become the storyteller, the other person become the subject. तो फिर तुम्हारी कोई importance नहीं क्योंकि मैं तुम्हारी कहानी बता रहा हूँ. So in that, I think we can only promote storytelling among people and to tell their own stories. That is, I think, the most important thing. And it is very, very, very important to, at least in the times that we live in, क्योंकि पता नहीं बाद में वक्त आएगा या नहीं रहेगा, रहेगा या नहीं रहेगा, हम कब तक ये वाली बातें कर सकते हैं in the political context, वो भी हमें नहीं पता. तो अभी अगर वक्त है आपके पास, तो बहुत ज़रूरी है कि the people, the youngsters who are sitting here, it's a very, very important reminder that you have to tell your own stories. Nobody will tell your story. That's a very, very important thing. And it is very important to capture these histories because nobody is capturing them. Like people are just, you know, people will show like खास तौर पे they will show their expertise on that. They will not tell your story. तो मैं ये भी कहूँगा कि बहुत ज़्यादा जर्नलिस्ट पे भी रिलाई ना करें. And being a journalist myself, I'll say that. तो अपनी कहानी खुद बताना और ईमानदारी से बताना. फिर उसमें ये वाली बात भी आ जाएगी कि भाई अगर मैं एक कहानी बता रहा हूँ और मैं 4 झूठ बोलकर मैं अपनी कहानी बता रहा हूँ, तो फिर 5वें झूठ के बाद लोग बंद कर देंगे किताब, है ना. तो एक वो भी एक बहुत ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट बात है कि ईमानदारी से बताओ अपनी कहानी. और तो I do think like it's not just me, it's not just Muslims even. It is very important for every young person to narrate their histories, narrate the histories of the places that they come from, you know, because in the long run, like these are the histories that will remain. Otherwise, in the political context, like you will get invisibilized, you will get criminalized. If you don't tell your story, somebody will start telling your story.
I'd like to extend the same vein to our panelists as well and request them to talk a little about the politics of representation, especially as Zeyad sir mentioned, representation that is personal and representation by proxy as well.
Zeyad has raised 2 questions in the book, and I have actually put a bookmark there. Just spoke about him. Yeah, he is writing about Cooper Code, and he writes a sentence like Cooper Code, civil life also has many sides. And then he adds in bracket, which someone who comes from there should someday write about. Now this is a very significant sentence because we are talking about this in civil life, and we have university students and teachers sitting here, and you know that he's talking about different localities, and his main focus in the book is not civil life. He's very clear about it. But this sentence, in fact, is a kind of challenge also, and an invitation also to many of you potential writers, how you can write. And here I will give you one example that how simply one sentence or a paragraph can be an important book for. When Ferdinand de Saussure was delivering his lectures, and when they were compiled in a book form, he talked about a particular sign of, he talked about a particular kind of study of science. And he said that linguistics can provide a model for that. Now, that sentence is actually something which attracted Raleigh Barthes, and he wrote a book, Elements of Semiology. That is, Raleigh Barthes' book, Elements of Semiology, was the result of just one short paragraph in a lecture of Ferdinand de Saussure. So I think that's when you are engaging with this book, you can also engage with the book creatively, and somebody can write this also. And Zeyad just mentioned this, that it is important to write, and you never know when actually you cannot even have this privilege to write, as he mentioned. Then there is another sentence which I have noted, and here many of my worthy colleagues are also sitting here. Sajjad Sahib is here. He's talking about journalism, and he's writing this sentence, and in addition there is a very specific type of glass ceiling for Muslims in Indian newsroom. That is, they are supposed to write particular kinds of stories, that they are supposed to write stories about Muslim condition that is expected of them. And then he raises this question towards the end: if this glass ceiling is present in journalism, where else does it exist? Does it exist in politics, administration, law enforcement? Does it exist in the art, poetry, marketing, and academics? Let me just address this question, how it can exist in academics also. And I am making a confession. I actually don't know when, from being a teacher of fiction, or from somebody who was writing on English fiction or American fiction, I gradually become an expert in inverted commas on books which have something to do with Muslims, whether these are novels, whether these are academic books. So many times actually those books come to me for review. I'll be invited to talk about those books, and in fact I'll be invited to many of those universities also. Right? So that means I did not choose South Asian literature, especially Urdu literature, as my subject to begin with. I never thought about it. But really, this is this kind of glass ceiling that a particular kind of academic identity actually is thrust upon it. And just to give you one example, recently a translation of Karbala actually appeared. Now, as many as 3 publication houses, they wrote to me that please review this book. Now, because the title of the book is Karbala, it is published, and of course, and 3 important publication houses actually wanted me to review that book because they thought that I could do that. Now, this is an example of glass ceiling. That is, probably if there is a book on an entirely different subject, they will think about others. So how you see in academics also certain kind of identity can be thrust upon. And this is something which actually I did not choose. It was greatly happening, right? So these 2 questions I found very interesting. Thank you.
So, Sir picked out specific instances from your book where you talked about the importance of writing as well as self-representation. I'd like to extend that same thing about the politics of representation and the importance of representing yourself in your own writing versus being represented by a proxy. What would you have to say about that, Nafis sir?
I really
Also about that question about memoirs like his serving like micro-narratives and archives of histories.
before we all get the million-dollar question, which anybody who has read, is reading, or will read this in future, is important to address first. And that is, and fortunately I didn't know Saad, is this Saad? Okay? So that's also there. So it's going to make me smile for the rest of my, this year at least. The million-dollar question is, and I've not been to the end where you redeemed him, how is he going to treat you? And from what I know of him, this is going to be difficult. First we'll get to that question.
So I have talked a lot about my family members, and not all of it flattering, to be honest. मतलब सच बोला है, अच्छी बातें नहीं बोली हैं, तो इस पे भी है. पर हाँ, मुझे ये लगता है कि like even with my brother Saad, who is in fact like a favorite character of many of the readers and not me, by the way. You know, like people have talked about him in panels. I like the book is about me. It's not about him. Okay, so that is something. So like, but yeah, like he. So but the point is like there is that kind of honesty between us. Like you know, like हाँ, like तुम मुझे बचपन में मारते थे तो मारते थे. अब नहीं करते, है ना? And of course he has redeemed. He's not that person. He's a very sensitive, gentle person now. You know, and like that's the reality. Like, and sometimes I do feel that sometimes we have to say the harsh truths to our family members before we start telling those stories to the world. You know, like अगर आप अपने घर वालों से, अपने दोस्तों से अगर आप सच नहीं बोल सकते, आप दुनिया से क्या ही सच बोलोगे? So that is very important, and I do think I am like even like when I'm talking about violence is a very very sensitive subject. You know, like violence is, and when I'm talking about the violence क्यों होती है, हिंदू और मुसलमानों में लड़ाई क्यों होती है, and like why do people die, why does it happen? तो मुझे violence की बात करनी पड़ेगी क्योंकि violence is lot present in our culture. The violence is not just ऐसा नहीं है कि कहीं पे कोई लड़ाई झगड़ा होता है वो अपने आप ही हो जाता है. Violence हमारे सिस्टम में है, violence हम लोगों की रोजमर्रा की जिंदगियों में भी है, हम लोगों की बातचीतों में violence है ना. And I will specifically be very harsh on Aligarh. Aligarh does have a very toxic masculine culture. मतलब बाकी सारी चीजें छोड़ो एक तरफ, मगर नाम तो उसी का होता है जो सबसे बड़ा बदमाश है, ठीक है? मतलब आप कुछ भी कर लो पर नाम तो उसी का रहेगा जो सबसे बड़ा बदमाश है. So like all of those things. So like अगर हम वायलेंस को अपने डोमेस्टिक लेवल पर, अगर हम वायलेंस को अपने पर्सनल लेवल पे अगर हम एड्रेस नहीं करेंगे, तो हम कैसे अपनी बात को लेके, हम किसी से कैसे ये सवाल करेंगे कि आप हम पे वायलेंस मत करो, कि भाई तुम तो अपने घर वालों पे हाथ उठा रहे हो. अगर मैं अपने घर वालों पे हाथ उठा रहा हूँ और मैं बाहर जाके मैं नॉन वायलेंस प्रीच कर रहा हूँ, तो people will call out that hypocrisy in a second, you know. So that is something that we need to be very aware of, what we are teaching our children right now, you know. And that is a very pertinent question, right? Like, matlab, you cannot claim to be a non-violent person if you shout at your child. You cannot claim to be a civilized person and living in civil line if you raise hands on your child, you know. And like, agar aap apne like, if that is not just a physical violence. I will also talk about violence of words, you know. Like, if we should be very conscious कि हम किससे क्या कह रहे हैं. अगर मैं, like, if I say a little insensitive thing, oh, you know, like, I did not like the way you dress, I do not like the way you carry yourself, you know, you don't know that is also some form of violence. You know, you don't know. You're traumatizing and putting those ideas in somebody's head for years, and that will define them, those things. So, like, if अगर हमें परेशानी है कि कहीं ना कहीं मुसलमानों की लिंचिंग हो रही है, या फिर कहीं ना कहीं बेगुनाह मर रहे हैं, और सिर्फ इंडिया में नहीं, इजराइल में मर रहे हैं, like, sorry, पैलेस्टाइन में मर रहे हैं, like, there is a lot of violence taking place all over the world, and like, it's not just me. Researchers are talking about these questions. You know, where does this violence come from? It comes from within us. It does not come from the outside, it comes from within us. So I do think when I talk about the family, it is also very important. Where does the violence comes from? It comes from within us. That's what my answer is.
Sir, would you like to add something to this?
Yes, and last we lost him last year, Paul Farmer used to talk about this structural violence in a completely different sense. And so because Saad is older, and because the era that we are talking about is a very eventful era, as Umair's The Wire review also talks about, where Umair precedes Zeyad by many years, and how that has changed Aligarh. My point here is the structural violence in, for example, Ayab Hai, who is otherwise known as the indestructible person, literally indestructible, as you describe him, and in a moment you realize that these lives are very dispensable. You can keep calling yourself indestructible, but this intergenerational cycle of poverty that has been explained in just 2 sentences actually evokes a huge sense of the structural violence that is present. Now, it's not only about how parenting skills and how our immediate vicinity, because we keep our kids protected from the immediate vicinity, create a micro environment. For instance, I'm from Purnia in Bihar, and only after I became a public health physician, I realized that there are floods every year in that district. I never saw one. So our parents create that micro environment. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is the structural violence is actually seen by kids, imbibed, and it destroys the empathy that is within us. It manifests in very strange ways. So therefore, I do think that some of that you have described, I'm sure if he were to write a book, he would have a lot more on those structural violences that he has seen, especially because it was the pre-91 era. And those stories were written and seen in that particular fashion. Not that it has improved anymore, but it has been reduced in terms of the space that it gets. So that is my take.
Thank you so much, sir, for your candid words about this. You've talked also about the stark difference between people who came from Mr. Zeyad's generation and people who came before him, have a stark difference in how they view these things and a stark difference in their general life as well. I have a lot more questions about this as well, but before we move on with my questions, I'd also like to emphasize that there are a lot of eminent dignitaries amongst us in the audience who would no doubt have invaluable things to add to it. So if anybody from the audience has a question they would like to pose to any of our panelists, we'll take them now. Any of our professors or any of the esteemed guests.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. Zeyad sir, very welcome to the campus back again. As we have discussed the book enough now, I had just this one question that you have worked as a journalist for like long time now in Vice, Brute and Readers as well. Now my question is, like I am a student of mass communication, so my question is how, being an author of a book, the storytelling narrative, which is as a journalist, there's a certain sort of storytelling narrative, and as an author, you have to shift to another side while you're printing it on the page where the book is talking to the reader. So how this shift happened for you, as you are a debut writer yourself as well. So how do you think these two storytelling narratives in a way, in your way?
Introduce yourself.
Yes, sir.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Sarem Mustafa Khan. I'm a student of mass communication, second year here.
So Sarim, like, though I have been a journalist for like 8-9 years, I have been a reader since my childhood. You know, I was reading comic books, I was reading novels. I also read like जो लोग चली के नीचे जो न्यूज़पेपर के जो चीज़ें दे देते हैं पढ़ने के, मैं उनको भी पढ़ लेता हूँ. So I do read everything, you know, and also the books by Aisha ma'am that provided us during our graduation. But like, I would say that to shift to a writing style. So I have been a journalist, I have been mostly been focusing on humanizing people on Instagram or Twitter, you know, like, because at the end of the day, the content there is, let's call it trash, very, very frankly. So like what you put inside your head comes out. So like if you start reading Dostoevsky, if you start reading Camus, or like even just good literature by Indian writers, like there is a book by It's All in Your Head, M, by Manjiren Durkar, my friend. Like, and all of these books are important because they tell the story of a particular time. So I do think, first of all, start reading, because बहुत सारे लोग किताब के बारे में बात करते, बहुत कम लोग किताब पढ़ते है ना. Like at the same time वो बहुत जरूरी है. मतलब मुझसे बहुत सारे लोगों ने किताब के बारे में आके बात कर रहे हैं, तारीफ ने कहा मतलब कि 7th chapter में क्या हुआ था, and then there is a quiz and then they fail. Okay, so I mean like हाँ ठीक है, मतलब पढ़ना भी जरूरी है. मतलब I did not, the point is I did not write it to be whatever, to be liked. I wrote it because I wanted to be read. So that is one thing. So it's from shifting to journalism. So I do understand that journalism provides a very, very limited canvas. So I was very happy, like I can write, I can keep writing, and no, there is no editor to stop me, you know. And I was very, okay, like I can write this also. So even during my work as a journalist, I was very, very restricted by the boundaries that they were creating for me. So I did use that opportunity, but at the same time, the responsibility comes on you. Like if I write one irresponsible sentence, the responsibility will be on me. So all of those things, if you want to shift from a journalistic perspective to a writer perspective, read the top of best of the best. Also read widely. You know, like there are some readers जो बस एक तरह की किताब पढ़ते हैं, वो भी बड़ी खतरनाक बात है मुझे लगता है सर, कि like I will only read the literature which is with a Marxist perspective. Like there are 1,000 schools of philosophies in the world. You need to know all of them to have a very, very holistic view. You have to read a lot and you have to read widely, and that is very important. And like I do find that these two things are the most important, and then start challenging yourself. Okay, like I don't know, I hated my writing when I started it. Like if I would not want to show to any of you what I wrote in the first draft, you know, and then you start writing, and then you see, okay, like this writer has used this tool, I will also, can I use this tool myself? You know, why not? Like what is stopping me? तो एक तो अपने दिमाग से डर निकालना बड़ी जरूरी बात है ना, कि लोग क्या सोचेंगे, मतलब हाँ ठीक है, मतलब कुछ हो सकता है किसी को पसंद ना आए, तो फिर पर ऐसा तो हर चीज के साथ होता है, मतलब मुझे भी बहुत सारे हर लोग पसंद नहीं कर सकते, पर वो भी हर किसी के साथ होता है. यू कैन नॉट बी लाइक by everybody. Your book cannot be liked by everybody, but it does have to appeal to a certain segment. Also, one important advice: if you want to write, if you have to imagine a person reading your book, imagine a friend, imagine an empathetic friend, एक ऐसा दोस्त जो आपको समझता है. आप उसके लिए लिख रहे हैं, आप अपने detractors के लिए नहीं लिख रहे हैं, आप अपने दोस्तों के लिए लिख रहे हैं. So that is one thing I did.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really, as Mr. said, very well said and really insightful. Thank you, Saran, for your question as well. If there's anybody else from the audience who has a question.
Hello. Thank you so much, Zeyad bhai, for coming here and gracing the event. In the starting, you said that you wrote the book keeping in mind the idea of Deviants and being Deviant. So my question is very straightforward. That did you write the book while thinking yourself as a deviant, or did you realize that whatever you have written was because, or did you realize that at the end of the book, you realize that what all I have written can be considered as being deviant?
I'll say it's a very self-absorbing thing, but yeah, I did think I was being defiant. I did think, and it was a conscious thing. None of the things that you read in the book comes out of itself. All of it is very, very conscious. Even the subtext that Asim sir talks about, even the, sir talked about, both these things are very, very conscious. So there is, why is there so much fear to tell the story of a Muslim living in a ghetto? And why hasn't it been written until now after 75 years of Indian independence? Why aren't there more histories of Muslim writers coming? What is this barrier? I was angry about all of those things. But in some ways, I did start and then started, I will just narrate my story honestly. That is how it began. And I do think that sometimes that Asim sir was just an act of storytelling becomes defiance, that is very important. अपनी कहानी बताओ तो सही, फिर उसके बाद बात होगी कि वो कैसी है, तो वो बताना बहुत जरूरी है. And in today's times हम लोगों के पास, बहुत सारे लोगों के पास सुनने का वक्त नहीं है, और बहुत सारे लोगों के पास बहुत, मुझे लगता है कि अलीगढ़ में तो हर कोई स्टोरी टेलर है ना. अलीगढ़ में उसको मैं क्रिटिसाइज करता हूँ, पर बहुत सारी चीजें जो स्टोरी टेलिंग टेक्निक से वो ढाबे पे भी सीखी हैं, बहुत ईमानदारी की बात है ना. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि अलीगढ़ में अगर आप लोगों से बात करें तो एक बंदा आपको 1 घंटे तक एक कहानी बताता रहेगा और वो थकेगा नहीं, है ना. तो उस वाली बात का बड़ा बट द पॉइंट इज एट द सेम टाइम हम लोग अपने आप को, हम लोग डरते बहुत है अपनी बात बताने से. ऑफ कोर्स हमें रीडिंग की कमी होती है, अक्सर पीपल पास ऑफ फैक्ट्स कुछ भी बोल देते हैं. So don't be inspired by that, but we have a natural storytelling skill. Aligarh, if it reaches your potential, it can be the biggest storytelling hub in the country. And it has produced, Aligarh, let's say, Aligarh has produced writers, Aligarh has produced feminist writers, Aligarh has produced independent writers, liberal writers throughout the history. And if we can, why not we can tell our own stories ourselves. So that is something, it was an act of defiance. Just telling your story sometimes become an act of defiance.
Thank you, sir. That was really very thought-provoking answer. We will continue to take more questions from the. All right, yes.
To the author. To the author.
Ma'am has a question.
This question is directed at Zeyad Masroor Khan.
Thank you.
Would you, for the sake of the audience, elaborate on the title? City on Fire, it reminds me of Pants on Fire. It's not, it's just the opposite of Pants on Fire. Pants on Fire means lying. City on Fire is basically about honesty of your lived experience. Could you talk about City on Fire, the title?
I think आग, फायर, लाइक ऐसा नहीं है कि वो सिर्फ एक सिंबॉलिक चीज़ है. लाइक ऐसा हम लोगों ने काफ़ी अपनी ज़िंदगी में घरों में आग लगते हुए देखी है. मुझे लगता है कि 50% जो लोग हैं उन्होंने कहीं ना कहीं पे किसी कोई एक्ट ऑफ वायलेंस देखा होगा जहाँ पे आग लग रही होगी. So this is also a reference to the shops and houses that I saw set on fire during my time, but that's not all. That's not all. You know, the city has been fire in many ways. The city has been fire. Like I do see fire as systematic violence. You know, I see fire as oppression of the weak. I see fire as oppression of the women. I see fire as, you know, like खास तौर पे oppression of the lower class. You know, that is very important. Like in Aligarh, I would say like, and like everybody will agree, every right thinking word was, there is a lot of elitism, you know, like in different circles. So like I do also see that as violence, and everybody, so you know, like there will be, so all of those things, like the lies that we tell ourselves, you know, like nothing burns inside us than the lies told by people close to us. So I do see the city has burning in its contradictions for such a long time, and like, you know, like we need all of us need a lot of healing, you know, like I don't know, like so many people died in the COVID pandemic, like in Aligarh, like hundreds and thousands of people died. COVID pandemic, हजारों लोग मर गए, कोई उनके बारे में अब बात नहीं करता, है ना. और वो जो आपका जो गम है, जो आपका जो दर्द है, वो आपके दिलो दिमाग में कहीं ना कहीं है, पर आप उसके बारे में बात नहीं करते, तो मेरे ख्याल से कहीं ना कहीं आप अपने अंदर से जल रहे हैं. तो एक वो भी एक है. अगर किसी ने आपके ऊपर कोई सवाल उठाया है, अगर किसी ने कभी आपके, you know, like if you are vilified as a community, if a Muslim is being vilified as a community, if I am being vilified because of the place that I come from, Ubercourt, you know, all of this burns inside me. And I do think it's not just the story of Aligarh, it's the story of my country, sadly and very tragically. You know, like we are burning in our own contradiction, and City of Fire is also about that. It's also about physical violence, it's also about the violence जो हम अपनी आंखों से नहीं देखते.
Thank you, Zeyad. Yes, of course, sir.
I have a question for Zeyad. See, all through the book, Harsh Manzil actually becomes a very important character. And I think this character returns again and again in different ways. And you know that as students of literature, we are familiar with the house becoming a character. Remember Sunlight on a Broken Column, where Ashiana, for example, starts telling the tale of partition and how that house becomes a very important metaphor to talk about partition. In many other works also. So when you talk about Harsh Manzil and especially its location, its the renovation work on that, the people living in that, I just want to know actually the entire process of this kind of writing. Harsh Manzil becoming character.
On top of it, and this is pretty related to that, is one of the best writers that we've ever produced, University, Raleigh Literary Society, was writing Mahabharata. He used the tree to narrate that event. And all through this book, especially in the initial parts, I was wondering, what if Harsh Manzil, and this is related to the question that she was asking, what if Harsh Manzil was telling its own story, at least for its own historicity? How do you, I'm sure you might have thought about it, and how did you process that, and what made you decide what would have been the advantages of using it as the narrator, especially of the history that went before you narrated?
I think that's a very important question. I'll ask both of these questions. First of all, this world has existed before me. This world will continue to exist after I die. Like this tree will probably outlive me. That tree will probably, this building will probably outlive me. You know, and I don't know. That is sometimes the tragedy of our lives. You know, when I go to mountains, I see that, okay, this stone will outlive me, you know. So like, I can only give my own interpretations of the house. The house will mean something different to my अम्मी. मेरी अम्मी के लिए वो घर किसी और तरीके से होगा, मेरे कजिन के लिए वो कुछ और अलग तरीके से होगा, मेरी भाई के लिए वो अलग तरीके से होगा. बट लाइक पर वो एक घर है और एक अपने घर का एक अपना कैरेक्टर होता है ना. हर दुनिया के हर घर का एक अपना कैरेक्टर होता है, हर शहर का अपना एक कैरेक्टर होता है. तो लाइक I do see like First Manzil as it's not just my house. I do see as one of the many houses that are in Ubercourt, which are facing the onslaught of modernity, as I might put it. You know, like there are so beautiful houses. You know, like they are being destroyed slowly. Like I see so many old houses which are being destroyed for nothing. And people will create ugly houses there, you know, and like they will think that it's modernity. Okay, and like many of the people, they don't understand the importance of the architecture, that this architecture is going away, you know. Also, by the way, that is also Muslim heritage, by the way. You know, that is also not just Muslim heritage, that is like my house is also Indian heritage, you know. This building, the old buildings of Aligarh, like this is not just, this is Indian heritage. This is like whatever have the Muslim friend who's made and you know, if they are beautiful, all of them are important pillars of this nation. So like this house represents a house in India. You know, it can be any other house. It is an old house, but it can also be a modern house, by the way. You know, but like I do see this house as I portray the decaying house, you know, in many ways. This house is falling apart. Sometimes we try to make it fine and then it falls apart again, you know. So like, this is also tells the story of Indian Muslims, you know, like even, I don't know, like, dare I say, like the university, we do have a lot to redeem ourselves if we want to live up to the expectation that the founders of the city, you know, the founders of the university, Zeyad Masroor Khan, you know, they talked about, you know, like the idea was utterly different. And so all of these are, so like First Manzil also becomes a character. Like in my book, even in my tree, मेरे घर के बराबर में एक नीम का एक पेड़ है, उसका भी कैरेक्टर है ना. वो देखता रहता है हम लोगों को कि तुम लोग कितने परेशान और अपने आप को कितना इम्पोर्टेंट. मेरे इलाके के जो बिल्लियां और कुत्ते हैं, like they are also a character. Like, and one thing that anybody wants to ever write a book, you know, and that is the most important advice that I will probably give today. Like, start observing people, you know. Observe me sitting here right now. You know, like, most people are so much engrossed in their own thoughts that they stop observing the world, you know. They stop observing the sensitivities of the people. They stop observing the houses, you know. Like, अब ऐसा होता है आजकल के ज़माने में, like nobody will stop and look at the beauty of a house, you know. यार क्या pillar खूबसूरत सा बना हुआ है. And the ones who see it, I congratulate them. You know, they are my, you know, a certain sense of respect already extends because you're stopping and seeing something which other people are not seeing. If you can see the beauty of this tree, I do think you can be a writer. So please start doing. अपने आसपास के लोगों को देखना, उनको समझना और उन्हें observe करना जरूर शुरू करें. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers. I must say that this book of yours and its subject matter has created quite a significant buzz and enthusiasm within our audience here. As you can see, we have more questions coming in from them.
ज़ियाद, पहले तो मैं अपनी मजम्मत कर दूं कि किताब जब मैंने पढ़ी नहीं तो मुझे सवाल ही नहीं पूछना चाहिए था. अभी डिस्कशन से काफ़ी कुछ समझ में आई किताब के बारे में. I was just wondering कि ये जो टाइटल है, City on Fire. During the course of your discussion, you were talking again and again about gender, gendered perspective, So when you have chosen this title, City on Fire, does it in any way signify Agni Pariksha which Sita was made to undergo? Because why do I raise this question? Because Aligarh, having a Muslim university, is always under many kinds of controversies and questions. So much so that the one who headed the university immediately after independence and partition, so his quotation has become so very famous कि हिंदुस्तान और उसकी हुकूमत इस यूनिवर्सिटी से जैसा रिश्ता रखेगी वही तय करेगा इंडिया के प्लुरैलिटी को। हालांकि जब एमयू के अंदर वाले अलीगढ़ बोलते हैं तो वो सिविल लाइंस या यूनिवर्सिटी कैंपस की सोसाइटी की बात करते हैं, उधर का नहीं करते हैं। सो मच सो कि 33 साल से मैं अलीगढ़ में हूँ, मैं कभी ऊपर कोट गया ही नहीं। तो
फाइट करता हूँ मैं आपको।
तो ये डिस्टिंक्शन मुशीरुल हसन ने अपने एस्से में रिकॉलिंग रेडिकल डेज में इस डिस्टिंक्शन को दो मेटाफर से उन्होंने जाहिर करने की कोशिश की, टाउन एंड गाउन। कॉन्वोकेशन में जो हम लोग गाउन पहनते हैं तो टाउन एंड गाउन, और इस मेटाफर को अनदर यंग स्कॉलर प्रतिनव अनिल इन हिज अनदर इंडिया, इन हिज बुक अनदर इंडिया, उसको बहुत दूसरे तरह से उसने इसको यूज़ किया है। तो ये हमेशा हमारे जहन में सवाल था कि 60s में 1960s में राही मासूम रज़ा ने एक नावल लिखा और उसका कैरेक्टर टोपे शुक्ला, ही हैड टू कमिट सुसाइड। और यहाँ के लोगों ने जो उर्दू आप बीतियाँ लिखी वो सिर्फ तारीफ़ों में ही लिखी, और रशीद अहमद सिद्दीकी ने तो कुछ ज़्यादा ही जुल्म कर दिया, वो सिर्फ तारीफ़ ही करते रहे। तो ये जो आपने वैसे तो ये शायद अभी डिस्कशन से निकल के आया कि किताब में आपने अपने को टाउन पे कॉन्फाइन किया है और गाउन को छोड़ दिया है कि गाउन वाले अपना लिखें अलग से। तो मैं सिर्फ ये जानना चाह रहा था कि क्या किताब में गाउन वालों के खिलाफ कुछ लिखा है या नहीं?
है, आप पढ़ेंगे काफ़ी कुछ मिलेगा आपको। और मुझे लगता है कि बहुत ज़रूरी भी है लिखना, क्योंकि लाइक हम दो चीज़ें अगर हम बात करते हैं, वी विल टॉक अबाउट, आई विल टॉक ऑल्सो अबाउट मार्क्स, लाइक द कंसेप्ट ऑफ क्लास, ऑल्सो अबाउट मिशेल फूको, द कंसेप्ट ऑफ पावर. So like if I'm sitting here in a suit, you know, I have a lot of power over, you know, somebody crossing by on a cycle, and that has to be acknowledged, you know, like I do think like if somebody lives in a ghetto or that part of the town, that person is slightly powerless than the people living in the university, and all of us have to acknowledge and, you know, support that thing. About the Agni Pariksha thing, and I do think there is a lot of scope for critical analysis of the university and its culture, and some of those things are I will talk about, like politics, like I do see, like when I was a child, I always see things from the perspective of a child. Why do these adults keep fighting among themselves? You know, when I was a child, I was like this, and when I grew an adult, I tried not to fight with people. I still do. I avoid conflicts. So when I see those things, like I do see Aligarh suffer from a lot of internal politics as well. You know, like why can't we, instead of being a united front against the time and oppression that we are facing right now, we are always embroiled in our own conflicts. Like it is very rare for people to be by heart support a cause together. Nothing comes out, no revolution, कोई इनकलाब अकेले नहीं आता पूरी दुनिया में, ना आज तक आया है ना कभी आएगा, है ना। जब तक हम लोग साथ में खड़े नहीं होंगे और उस दिल से साथ में खड़े नहीं होंगे, तब तक कुछ हम अपने आप को बचा नहीं पाएंगे। हम दुनिया को क्या बचाएंगे, हम अपने आप को भी नहीं बचा पाएंगे। तो एक वो वाला एक बहुत बड़ा एक सवाल है कि लाइक yes, like I have been very critical of the politics of the university and like even North Indian culture, even as like, because I do think it is you know, like if we don't talk about it, how do we evolve? And to answer the question of the Agni Pariksha, So it's not just AMU. I do think the Agni Pariksha is also for Aligarh. It's for every Muslim who reside in the country. You know, like you have to keep proving your loyalty to again and again and again. कि मैं मुसलमान हूँ, मैं खतरा नहीं हूँ आपके लिए, है ना? मैं मुसलमान हूँ और मैं देश का दुश्मन नहीं हूँ. You know, मैं सिस्टम का दुश्मन नहीं हूँ. तो like एक कहीं ना कहीं आपको अपनी लॉयल्टी और अपनी एक रेलेवेंस कि आई एम ऑल्सो सिटीजन, लाइक यू हैव टू कीप टेलिंग दैट अगेन एंड अगेन. तो अग्नि परीक्षा सिर्फ मेरी नहीं, अग्नि परीक्षा सब लोगों की, शहर की है और इस शहर के सब लोगों की अग्नि परीक्षा चल रही है. और पूरे लाइक आई डू थिंक कि हिंदुस्तान के एट दिस पॉइंट इन टाइम ऑल द मुस्लिम्स I like even the like why restricted to Muslims? Like let's talk about Hindus. Like you know, like उनकी भी अग्नि परीक्षा चल रही है. Will they take a stance against what is happening in the country? If certain community is being demonized, everybody has to talk about it. Just not the responsibility of Muslim journalists. It's the responsibility of everyone. It's the responsibility of Hindu, Muslim, Christians, and Jains and Parsis. You know, like. So like अग्नि परीक्षा तो देखिए सभी की चल रही है, खास तौर पे हमारी चल रही है, पर चल सकती रही.
Thank you so much, Zeyad sir, and thank you, Sajjad sir, for your question as well. If there are any more questions from the audience.
Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, sir. So I have a question from, I think this might be on the minds of a lot of students here, and I think we have talked a lot about the contents of the book, reading between the lines, themes, you know, and obviously the creative aspect of how, you know, the process of writing. I just want to ask the technical aspect of this in terms of, you know, there are a lot of budding writers and aspiring writers that we have here, but it feels like an insurmountable task to go over and seek publishers, you know, big names like HarperCollins or Penguin and etc. like that. So I just want to know the technical aspect of how you could maybe, you know, how did it go about for you, and how, you know, any advice you will have for the budding writers. That's my question. Thank you.
So one of the most important thing is if you try to do something, try to do it well. You know, don't do anything half-heartedly. And there is nothing like a part-time thing. Anything like आपको लगता है कि like you can do 4 things at the same time, you will be doing 4 things very very badly mostly. You know, so let's just try to do one thing and try to do it well. So like when I was decided to write the book, I'll say that when I wrote my proposal, I invested 3 months in just in writing the proposal of the book. You know, and like, and then 1 month I spent in just revising that proposal. And I did know, like I had that confidence, when it goes to the publisher, they will take it. And of course, like when it went to the publishers, because I had put it in such a context that there were 4 publishers who were interested in it, you know. So like it's also about the times and the story that you are telling. Like also like do think about the relevance of the topic that you are proposing. Like in this time, if I start writing, and which is something some people might object, like if 2023, if I start writing about the communal harmony between and Hindus and Muslims, it's not relevant. I'm sorry. You know, people have written a lot of those things. And one thing, like people have written a lot on the Aligarh Muslim University. People have not written anything on the city. People have not written anything on Upperkot. People have not written anything on Jamalpur. People have not written anything on Jeevangarh. So all of these are territories that are still vacant. These are things that are still open for you. Like if you go there, if you find stories, and I dare you, you go there, you will find stories. You will find stories of people. Try to talk to people empathetically, you will find stories. So just in Aligarh, there are 100 books. You know, like I just wrote one. 100 किताबें हैं अलीगढ़ में भी मौजूद, है ना? मतलब like somebody was telling me, I also wanted to write a book on Aligarh. मैंने कहा लिखो, है ना? You have to, ऐसा नहीं है कि मतलब तुम्हारी उम्र गुजर गई है, लिखो. And especially for the younger people. But when you do it, I do understand that I did also have some savings from my you know, like my journalism, that I invested that in sustaining myself for that. So matlab ye hai, you should have plans for financial sustenance first of all. But when you write, you should know what you are trying to do. Matlab, there shouldn't be confusion in your mind. Like, I do listen to all of my friends all the time who are here. I do listen, but like something which is only yours, your mind, only you can write. I will never be able to write something that Asim sir can. Like that is because he will write his own unique thing. All of us are unique in our own ways to capitalize on that. And I did capitalize on the fact that nobody has written about Uber code. That is a vacant plot, let's say. So like just write and go in with write a very detailed proposal, and of course make it politically relevant according to the time. And I'm telling you, there is nothing that can stop you. So that is for you.
Thank you so much for your answers, Yasser. With the way that this lively discussion is going, it seems as if the questions will be never ending, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So to just wind up, even there are so many questions even on my mind as well. To wind up the discussion, I would like, this question is directed to all of our panelists. There's just one thing. Why is it that a prominent institution like ours has been able to generate such commendable impact throughout North India as well as South India? Talking about ANU here. But yet it has still been unable to reach the Aligarh Sheher area where you come from, sir. So what is it that characterizes this intellectual mentality, or this elitism, as how you had put it, this intellectual mentality that alienates such a large part of the city, the Sheher area, from the civil lines, and makes it so that our institution has far-reaching impacts, but not localized ones? This is a question that, yes. I'd like all of our panelists to pitch in about this.
I'll be a little happy. When you sit in a university, and I'll be very frank as well. I think we overvalue of our university. We do that quite a lot. That doesn't mean that there are people affected all over the world by the university. And before I really answer this question, in May, I was in Uppsala University and I was admiring, and I used to hate these symbolisms that we have in our university, pump and show events, and and then I saw this gentleman who was hoisting a flag. I was early to the program and I said, what are you doing? I mean, what is this flag about? So he said, you know what? This flag is Vice Chancellor's flag. So whenever Vice Chancellor has an address on some of the buildings, this flag is hoisted. I said, I finally found a place, which redeems all of the things that we are doing. So, and this flows from the top. So you would think that there is a critical mass of teachers otherwise who would nurture, who would nourish, who would produce critical papers. And when I say critical, I do not mean critical from political science point of view because you are in political science. No. I mean critical in the real sense. But now, what do we have here? We have aggregators, we have accumulators, we have, and I'm bringing to the book, and Sajad's question as well, is what he talks about. 100 meters from here, there are two vice chancellors. I wonder if you know the other chancellor. It's hardly 100 meters away. The building is right there when you cross Blossom side. So if you have this huge mass of accumulators, aggregators, people who are going on in their lives, people who are like the cowardly lion in the Little Prince, So the lion knows that you are a coward. He was a coward. And therefore what he did is, he saw the Tindra. And the entry in the novel is he starts beating him up, with a shout. He had a wild roar. And then the protagonist asks, why are you doing this? This is just a poor guy. He's helping you all and everything. So he said, I am a coward. Unless and until I shout and beat somebody, I would not be valued. That is in a sense the problem that we are facing. It's very grim, and it is at the stage that we are in, the kind of accumulators, aggregators and opportunists that we have all around, it is extremely difficult and almost utopian to think that we'll start thinking of the people across the board. So yeah.
To add, he rightly said that sometimes university people act in a very self-obsessed manner, but there is definitely need to do something to reach out, because we cannot just share our responsibility towards society, and especially something which is very close to us. So I think there has been a lack. There has been this lack, and it needs to be addressed. It's not a very good thing. It's a very sorry state of affairs. Yeah. We should all feel responsible for this in some ways.
I think Nafis sir and Sir Rasim sir put it really beautifully. But I would add something there is the university or has a bit of the hands-off approach, about talking about certain things, and that comes from a lot of factors like dynasticism, feudalism, all of those things, and we are not separate from the times and the place that we come from. But at the same time, I will also talk about the beauty of this university. मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि सब चीज़ें खराब है, खूबसूरती भी है. खूबसूरती उन चीज़ों में है कि I wasn't this writer and ever. I was just a normal small-time journalist looking to talk to Asim sir. और उस टाइम पे आसिम सर ने मुझसे बात करी. मतलब वो भी एक ह्यूमैनिटी, एक ब्यूटी है. मतलब मैं भी कभी शहर का ऊपर बोर्ड का एक लड़का था, तो उस टाइम पे आयशा मैम ने और समीना मैम, आयशा मैम ने किताबें दी, समीना मैम ने समझाया, तो वो एक ब्यूटी भी है. तो ऐसा भी है कि ऐसा नहीं है कि और लोग ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. मतलब ऐसा है कि हाँ हम बहुत सारी चीज़ें, हमारे खुद के बैरियर्स हैं, वो हमारे दिमाग में इतने आसानी से हमारे सामने नहीं होते हैं. पर हाँ एक दो चीज़ें हमेशा ये हैं कि वी कैन ऑलवेज क्रैक दीज कोड्स just by just being nice and compassionate to people, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि okay, you can still be proud of yourself and your achievements, but at the same time you can still be proud of someone else, even this event where I'm allowed, I do think this is also an act of defiance. Somebody somebody might say what is this guy doing here, but you people are assembled here. This is also an act of defiance and anti-elitism. Somebody would have easily discredited me because I do not come from a very big family, but you people are here. They can still do it. The point is that. I do think apart from, especially at these times, of course, the university Aligarh खास तौर पे is under a lot of scrutiny. ऐसा नहीं होता कि सारी कमी अलीगढ़ में ही नहीं है ना? At the risk of sounding like a devoted son of अलीगढ़, सारी कमियां अलीगढ़ में नहीं है. DU में भी कमियां हैं, जामिया में भी कमियां हैं, JNU में भी कमियां हैं. उनके बारे में उनकी अपनी अलग कमियां हैं, ठीक है? तो at the same time Aligarh is always put under a lot of scrutiny, by you do this, you do this, you do this. I don't think all of those scrutinies is probably extended to let's say IIT Madras or some place. They are terrible elitist places, some of them, this is, but of course क्योंकि सिर्फ अपनी ही आपको अपने घर अगर आप अपने बारे में सच्चाई नहीं बताएंगे तो फिर कौन बताएगा. तो मैं अपनों की हैसियत से ये वाली बात कह रहा हूँ कि हाँ all the people even the people those who come from dynastic families, people those come from rich families, people who come from families which have a privilege, you have the responsibility to be helpful to the people, to those who don't have it, and that also extends to me, by the way. Of course it's sometimes very difficult to a lot of people reach out to me. It's very difficult to respond to each and everything, but it also becomes my responsibility to give back to the institution. It becomes everyone's responsibility. So yeah, elitism is there, but beauty is also there, I will say that.
Yes, sir, the idea of giving back to people. Yes, sir.
I'm stopping in between is because, so by no means whatever I remarked is by no means saying that the university that we have here is not worth the mention. It is not comparable to any other institution, and no other institution should be compared. Let's leave that nonsense to NIRF and these ranking committees. Okay, we have a whole body for that. But what I am trying to mention is just one story. So I meet this lady who had problem in Stockholm in going to her hotel. She's one of the delegates. I don't know her. She knows English, she doesn't know the Swedish language. I help her out, and she says, "Where are you from?" And this is an old lady, this would be 70s, in her 70s. I'm deliberately not mentioning her name. I didn't know where she was from. She introduces herself. She was in the same conference, and I realized that she's a professor of pharmacy, and the only one woman who I have seen in headscarf in many of my visits in such, invited conferences. When she started saying, "Are you from AMU?" I said, "Yes." "Oh my God, I must thank you." I said, "What did I do?" So she said that, when my mother, and then she came from South Africa, she said that when my mother had to look for an institute where she could get her higher education, this was the only university that was open to women at the time. No other South African university had even thought of opening their institutions to women. That is our foundational value. If you think from there, it should anger you. And as you say in your book yourself, that anger is pure, and that anger might lead to some action. Otherwise, and as you say again in that book, in that particular paragraph, and we've talked about the 100 meters from here, you will have people who have greed. They'll make everything an opportunity. Every crisis would be an opportunity. It's actually a slogan in India. We all know the slogan. So from that reflection, I was pointing out to that particular front. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Nafis sir. Like I said earlier, because of the content of your book has resonated so deeply with our audience here, the questions both from us and the panelists and even me are never ending. But unfortunately, we are very short on time now. So we'll be winding up the discussion. Also, HarperCollins has very graciously accepted to provide us with a few copies of Zeyad sir's books, which you can get right here and get them signed by him. I would now like to call the people with the mementos and have them presented. Firstly,
So before I sign off, there are members of my family. मेरी अम्मी यहाँ बैठी हैं, पीछे की तरफ बीच में. मेरे भाई शायद कहीं पीछे खड़े हुए हैं, है ना. my मामू, कमर मामू, he was the founding member of Babri Masjid Action Committee, and like मेरे फूफा है रज़ी साहब, he's been social worker, and like all of the people in my family, my cousin Tariq Bhai is sitting there, Urfi is sitting there, like all of these people, like they have made me what I am today. Libba is sitting there, Hibba is sitting. So just I don't know, they did not get a chance to speak. Just a round of applause for them.
a well-deserved round of applause. Thank you so much. I would now like Asim sir to present Zeyad sir with the memento. Next, I would like Professor Samina Khan to make her way to the stage and present the memento to Professor Dr. Nafis Faizi. Thank you so much, Samina ma'am. Lastly, I would request Professor Aisha Munira to please present the memento to Asim sir.
Ma'am, from there. सेंटर फोटो कर लेते समीना मैम को बुला.
हाँ, ठीक है. Yes, of course. Sharmeen group family members sitting here to please come.
Sharmeen, ask them to come.
Downstairs.
अब बंद कर दो ये लाइव बंद कर दो। हाँ इसको कर दीजिए, कर दीजिए।